Our guest tonight is Kate Genovese. She's a member of the National Writers Union and also the author of 2 other books before she wrote the one that I'm going to talk about in a minute. The first one is 30 Years in September, a nurse's memoir. And the second is a book called Loving Joe Gallucci, Love and Life with Hepatitis C. She's a registered nurse, works in the community health field, and lives in the Boston area, will be vague, with her family. Of her latest book, the Midwest Book Review says, "The best upbringing in the world doesn't foolproof one from a terrible life. 2 weeks since my last confession," which is the title of the book, "follows Molly O'Brien, daughter of a senator and raised by a devout Catholic. To the public, she had the perfect upbringing, but at 30, she has a crippling heroin addiction and her life is on the rocks. What went wrong? Her family holds deep secrets, and only they can come to terms with them to set Molly on the right path again in life." 2 weeks since my last confession is a moving novel of dealing with one's dark past. As I mentioned before, her previous 2 books, 30 Years in September, A Nurse's Story, and Loving Joe Gallucci, Love and Life with Hepatitis C, like her latest, are inspired in part by life, only in part, of her life experiences, and also people she's met in her travels, and they tell of loss in a search for purpose. We're very honored to have Kate here tonight, and I want to welcome her.
Alan even pronounced the last name right. My husband would be very happy. Genovese. But anyways, this library reminds me of the little library that I used to go to when I was little, and I'll get to that in a minute. So as Alan said, I'm a registered nurse, and I do writing as well. And I worked at Leahy Clinic for about 19 years. And then I went on to visiting nursing, and then I went to school nursing in Woburn for 5 years, and then back to management in Hallmark Health, which is in Malden, and that's what I do now presently. So what got me starting to write? Well, first of all, let me just back up to my childhood. I grew up in Watertown. I have 6 brothers and sisters, and I have 3 children of my own. They're grown now. But when we were little, my dad used to he was very big on education and reading. He used to tell us we had to go down to the little library in Watertown, and there's another Watertown person here, so we had to pick out books, and I say we because I can remember my little sister Denise with me, and would walk down together with my dad and special time and get books, and then we had to do a book report. So we either had to act it out, or the characters, or we could write it out. So of course we were little hams and we would act out the characters. So I had a real love for books at an early age. And then later on, you know, writing, I had to just write in nursing school, and you know, I wrote for some papers every once in a while. But in 1995, my family, my kids, and my family of origin were going through a very difficult time in our lives. There was an incident that happened, and I had to seek some help. And the counselor I saw said to me, you know, why don't you write this down, just journaling, because somehow journaling just gets everything out in the open. It helps heal. Studies show that writing helps heal, so that's what I did. And I ended up writing that incident out into a book, and it's called A Silence So Still. And it sits in my bottom drawer, and I don't think I'll ever do anything with it. But it got me on the path where I really loved to write. I didn't realize how much I really loved writing. And I wanted to get something published. And I didn't know what. I wanted to do something thought-provoking. I wasn't sure. I was all over the place with what and how I wanted to do it. And at the time I had left Leahy Clinic, and I was a nurse, a visiting nurse in Burlington. And it was Arlington, VA, but my area was Burlington and Woburn, and I had this great patient named Joe Lombardo, and I say his name freely because he's in this book, 30 Years in September. And Joe was in his 40s, and he had diabetes, and he had been a school teacher, had to retire because he lost his vision, and he developed problems with his kidney, and long story short, he needed kidney pancreatic transplant. That's where I came in. I'd start in the morning and go change his dressings, and at nighttime, before I ended, I'd go back. So I'd go in twice a day. And that's like unheard of now in home care. Totally unheard of, but I'll get to that later. So anyways, Joe was becoming really depressed. And I couldn't stand it because he just kept having one problem after another. So I decided to just tell him funny stories. So I'd go in his house and I'd just tell him funny stories of the nurses here. And you know, we have funny stories, and story of the patients. And he would be laughing his head off and say, "Why don't you write a book? This stuff's so funny. Why don't you just write a book?" So I said, "Well, I don't know, Joe. It seems kind of far-fetched, but let me try it." So my kids played hockey at the time, and I'd take my notebook, and I write longhand all the time. I'd take my notebook in the hockey rink while they were practicing and write patient stories down, but it just wasn't gelling. It just, you know, I felt like it wasn't enough. So I had to stop with the writing because my mom got real sick that May, and I had to take care of her all summer. And so I kind of put things on hold. But in September she passed away, and and she was 92, so it was sad, but she had a great life. So like I said, I came from a big family, and my oldest brother, who's very bossy, was in charge, and my job was to go up the attic, and I had to clean it out. So now my attic was like no other. I was scared to death of it. I was still afraid 10 years ago of my attic that I grew up with. Because when we were little, my brothers, I mean, we're very Irish, and the Irish just totally talk about the dead all the time. And so we thought it was, they used to say our grandparents that were dead were living up there. And, you know, there's ghosts up there. So I was always like scared to go up there. I'd have to run up and get things and this and that. But anyways, my job was to do that. And believe it or not, I was still a little frightened. So I took my 12-year-old, who was about 200 pounds at the time, with me to go up the attic and be my bodyguard, I guess. So anyways, I went up the attic, and it was amazing because it just brought back so many nice memories. I saw my dad's trophies from college. I saw this old sewing machine sitting there that I don't know who got that, but somebody, that was a find. It was probably worth about, you know, $5,000, but I didn't get it. And then I saw this whole stack of books, and I went over to him, and it was my nursing books from 1969 when I started nursing school. So I was all excited, and I grabbed them, and I sat in the top step, and I was reading them, and I was saying, "Oh boy, look at my handwriting." That of an 18-year-old. I felt so young, and I had written a letter to my girlfriend Nancy. I was only in school in Boston, and Nancy was in school in Waltham, but we wrote letters to each other. And one of the letters, I guess I didn't mail, I wrote, I was so mad at my father because I had to start school that August. I had to take classes, and I was so mad I tried to convince my father I should start school in January because I was going to Woodstock, and there was no stopping me, and I couldn't start school if I was going to go to Woodstock. So that conversation went south, and I started school. And I was reading, you know, through it, and I was thinking, wow, the times then in the 60s, it was very tumultuous with the Vietnam War going on, Bobby Kennedy, and you know, Martin Luther King dying, and moratoriums. And I said, I could write this memoir. I'll write it as a nurse's memoir, and then I'll, you know, throw my patients' stories in there. So that's what I started to do, and I got very excited and passionate, and I would take my notebook with me wherever I went, and, you know, even in the middle of the night, I'd have it beside my bed, and sometimes I'd wake up and couldn't sleep, and thoughts would come to me. And a lot of things came back very easy, and I want to just start with my first patient that I ever took care of. And this was at Beth Israel Hospital. I was an LPN first, so it's this LPN school.